Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 88. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for tuning in this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Did you see all that snow we got up here?
Yeah.
Or out here?
Did you freeze to death? Yeah, right.
No, the funny thing about it is we back in Florida where I'm from, we would get snow like once every 15 years, and usually not enough to stick or anything like that. But when it gets cold in Florida, it's more of a damp cold and it bites. It's a stinging cold. And when it was snowing pretty good here, last week, even my wife said, "Man, it doesn't feel cold enough to snow here." It's more of a drier cold, if you will. But it was a novelty to watch happen. I mean, it snowed, pretty much straight for 24 hours there, and enough to stick on the ground and the cars, and fun to watch little Finley Pearl play and chomp at the big snowflakes coming down and all like that. But it was quite a sight to see. It was a novelty, but I was ready for it to be over with. I'm ready to get back to some of this 60 and 70 degree weather out here.
Well, lucky you. I'm glad you survived the winter storm of 2019. Congratulations. All right, Dave, let's get to some Steelers news. Probably the most recent news that just came in. You wrote about it early Tuesday morning. New contract details in for Tyson Alualu. To me, a little higher than I expected, very similar to the deal he signed whenever he first became a Steeler in 2017, according to Joel Corey. It's a 2-year deal of $5.75 million with a $1.75 million signing bonus, due to make $1.25 million as his base salary in 2019. What do you come in on his contract?
Yeah, and I put in the comment section, I think, on the write-up on the post that we did when they re-signed Alualu, that don't be surprised if his contract comes in similar to the one that he signed a couple of years ago, and that's really exactly, just a little shy of that number. I think last time it was 2 years, $6 million. This year it's 2 years, $5.75 million. I don't find that shocking at all, and I don't think people should be upset about it at all. Obviously the signing bonus, not hard to deal with. Look, if you can get one more year out of him, he's worth the money. You only risk $875,000 in dead money for 2020. When you look at the state of the defensive line right now, and the depth chart, and you kind of figure that guys like L.T. Walton and Daniel McCullers, even if they are re-signed this offseason, aren't guaranteed to make the roster. Look, you needed some experience depth there. Obviously not a premier player, one that's on the back end of his career. I think you could do worse than Tyson Alualu, so I don't think anybody should have any problems with this, with the numbers in this deal at all.
Agreed. It still is a smart signing. I think it was quality depth. I think the versatility he gives you. I think the effort he gives you. I think what he is able to do against the run. Now you want to find somebody that's probably a little better pass rusher, probably fits the mold of a one-gap type. He feels like more of the old-school two-gap type, just kind of take on bodies against the run. But do you think they bring back Walton or McCullers? I can't imagine. Maybe Walton, but I feel like you just got to move on from the other guys.
Well, last year at this time, I was pretty much saying no way they signed Daniel McCullers,
True.
and he re-signed, 1-year deal, and obviously didn't play very much. And then with Walton, look, if you want to re-sign that guy to the minimum and let him compete, have at it, But I don't think I'll be shocked if those two are re-signed for minimum deals. But I'll be disappointed if both wind up making the 53-man roster. I think this is a position that you need to address again during the draft. You could probably even go out, with some of the available free agent money this offseason, and maybe find another experienced player kind of comparable to Tyson Alualu as well. I kind of doubt that's going to happen now at this point, but don't be shocked if it does happen. But when you look at Tuitt, Cameron Hayward, Javon Hargrave, and now Alualu. You expect them to at least get a player that can maybe play both over the nose and maybe some 4 or 5 tech this offseason at some point. But yeah, I mean, look, defensive line is a position I think both of us agree will be addressed during the draft at some point.
Probably, or free agency, a low-level move. I have a couple names in mind. Maybe we'll touch on later in the show. But yeah, you carry 6 on your roster. They do that every single year. You have 5 active on game day. Right now, you're looking at 4 guys, assuming that Walton and McCullers aren't re-signed. McCullers surprised me last year, but I think the large reason why they gave McCullers one last chance was because of the new D-line coach and Carl Dunbar, who I think did get more out of McCullers than John Mitchell did. I thought the fit between Dunbar's coaching style, a little bit softer compared to Mitchell, was a good thing for McCullers. But still, McCullers' best year, which was last year, was still a very underwhelming, quiet season. Now I think hopefully you move on for good. So we'll see what happens with how they address that position. Again, like you said, it's not going to be a shock or a surprise if they bring anybody back for a minimum salary benefit contract, but I can't see a compelling reason to bring those guys in, and certainly no reason for them to make the 53.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, Dave, I think the biggest thing that came out on our end, on the site's end, was you had your first mock draft, which you posted Sunday night, and a lot of great comments, a lot of great information, so I'll kind of go through it round by round to take your temperature on the rationale for why you chose each guy in the first round to pick 20. You went with Polite, the edge guy from Florida. Why Polite and why edge?
First of all, you have to agree this is probably the best mock draft in the history of Steelers Depot, correct? I mean,
well, I still think you signed my check, so yes, it's the best one I've ever seen, Dave. Until that Rooney money comes in.
I got scared. I got scared. I got a few positive comments. I think I peaked too early this year.
Yeah, it's all downhill from here.
Yeah, and Lord knows people think that as in depth as we get in, this time of off season. And how much we both enjoy studying, prospect tape and talking draft prospects and all. Doing mock drafts is the absolutely worst for us, or especially for me, because I think I try to please all the people all the time, and with a mock draft, you're not going to do that. So
wait, you try to please all the people all the time?
Well, when it comes to these, you try to come up with the perfect the perfect mock draft, and there's no such thing. And look, years ago when I nailed the first 3 picks of the draft many moons ago, I think that was about it as far as my luck goes at predicting these things. But yeah, look, I think the big takeaway in the exercise when you do these things is it gives you a good list of players to discuss the pros and cons and how they fit with the Steelers. And my mock drafts I do not how I would probably draft for the Steelers, but how I would think that the Steelers end up doing. And that's the word mock draft. I'm trying to mock what I think the Steelers would do. Ja'Kai Polite, you and I have talked quite a bit about him already this offseason. 6'2", 240 pounds. It's going to be interesting to see him go after it at the combine as an edge. See him go through some of the drills of dropping in coverage, something he didn't do a lot. But I mean, as a pure pass rusher, he really progressed, I thought, during the 2018 season. Obviously, 2017 season tapes not bad either. I think the big thing with him is he needs to get better against the run, and then also a little bit of awareness issues, I think, when deciphering things. And then, like I said, he didn't, as far as I can see, didn't drop all that much into coverage at the University of Florida there. It really came down to just a handful of players to put in this spot right now. Obviously, I'm a Devin White fan. I don't want to get into he will or won't be there. I knew if I put him in there, I was going to get the he won't be there comments on there. I think there's a chance he will be there, but I do think Devin White where I sit right now as the top inside linebacker in this draft class, and I think he's going to show that at this upcoming combine. So I didn't want to go. I guess you could say the other consideration would be a guy Byron Murphy, but I didn't. You recently I think mocked Byron to the Steelers, so I wanted to kind of go a different direction there, give us a little bit different name to talk about. The thing with these tweeners, and you and I have talked about Polite before, is look, I think Ja'Kai Polite is a top 40 player. But where is he in that top 40? Is he more to the back end of the top of the 40? Is he more in the middle where I basically have him right now? History I don't think has been overly kind to these kind of players, these tweeners, such as Polite.
If the Steelers were to draft Polite in the first round, how would you expect him to be used in year one? Assuming Bud Dupree is, staying on his fifth-year option, certainly still with the team. Obviously a rotational guy, but what would be your kind of rough plan for getting him? Because you got to get these first-round picks to play and play heavy snaps.
Yeah, I think you try to give him those snaps that was going to Anthony Chickillo, right?
Mm-hmm.
A couple 200 or 300. Of course, a Denier. I think right now a lot of people are expecting a Denier to not only make the roster but see a little bit more playing time there. But in addition to special teams work, which you would expect a rookie outside edge with his height and weight and all to contribute on special teams. I think as the season progresses, you try to get him more and more rotational snaps in that defense. Something to the tune of around 300 or 400 or so, I think.
With first-round picks, usually there's got to be a defining trait, something that makes them worthy of that first-round pick. What do you see as a defining trait if you had to pick one in Ja'Kai Polite's game? Something that sticks out about Ben, hand use.
I think it's the ability to find his finish, his ability to find the football. He had quite a few strip sacks there at Florida. So, look, I mean, one thing about this Steelers defense, not enough turnovers, right? We've seen these sack totals over 50 the last two seasons, right? But where are the turnovers? So I think that's one thing that really sticks out to him with him. I like his bevy of counters already. He's got a nice little spin move that he likes to use. I like the hand usage with him. I think when he's down with a hand on the ground, which obviously he probably wouldn't do a lot with the Steelers, I think he has a nice speed to power conversion there as well too. I'd like to see him be able to from a stand-up position work on that get-off and speed to power there. But really, I think the defining trait with him, not elite bend, but he has some enough that I think I think more than capable of being a good edge rusher because of that. But I think the defining trait, I think that sticks out the most to me when going over his film was I guess his finish and his ability to rip out that football.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, this team is far and away first place in sacks the last 2 years, and they're 26 in takeaways. And those two numbers shouldn't mix the way that they do. And with the way that the NFL rules are, it's so tough to hit quarterbacks these days that really they're getting coached to strip the football, to not worry about trying to finish the play and get the sack, get the ball out. So you can't get an illegal penalty for hitting the quarterback with the way the rules are. So, yeah, solid pick there. I like Polite, and I think it will make a lot of sense. Second round, you went corner, addressing the elephant in the room with one of the biggest needs for this team with the corner from Penn State, Amani Warrior. Still work on that last name, but what made you go with him?
Yeah, and let me preface, me, I'm not one to predict trades or whatnot, but to try to make...
I think you cheated here a little bit. I'm a little salty at you.
I did, but in the effort to make this the best Steelers mock draft of all time, I had to bend the rules a little bit here. Look, I think not many, you and not many listeners to this podcast don't think that at some point between now and the draft, Antonio Brown, won't get traded. So I'm still not going. We'll talk a little bit more about this, I think, later in the show. I'm not convinced they're going to get a first-round pick for him, Alex. So, I think the best case scenario otherwise is to get a team's second-round pick, maybe one in that top 15 of the second round or so. So I speculated, I predicted a trade of some sort that would give the Steelers a second-round pick, maybe in that top 10, 15 in the second round. I went with Amani out of Penn State here. Wow. When you get into these corners past the top, 3 or 4, talking about Greedy, talking about DeAndre Baker, talking about Byron Murphy, it kind of drops off a little bit there. I think there's a definite tier line there, and I think Amani is right there in that second tier somewhere. I did a contextualization of him, and obviously we have a write-up on the site, a profile up on him on the site already. Good, not great. Can play can play press and off coverage. A big physical guy, should be able to match up well against the bigger bodied wide receivers in the NFL. Not afraid to stick his face in the fan, so to speak, and make tackles. Well rounded, I think, as a coverage man. Was able to make some plays there at Penn State. But would have liked to seen a little bit more, and I think that's why he's probably not going to be considered a first-round pick, more of a second to third-round selection. The Steelers obviously have, or we think, have a need at cornerback in this draft again. They should know quite a bit about Amani, being as how he played at Penn State. Sort of the best of the rest, I think, if you will, when you talk about the that second tier of cornerbacks in this class.
Yeah, no, it's totally fair. If you're looking for a guy that can play the football and has plus ball skills, this guy is your guy. And I think he's got 8 career interceptions, so he's got a knack for coming down with the football. And obviously the need exists at corner. And I agree, he's in that second tier. I do like him, I think, a little bit more than like a Trayvon Mullen from Clemson. I think they're similar guys, but I do see them as day 2 guys, not day 1 guys. So yeah, I think that one made a good deal of sense. I guess the biggest question with him, and I'll take your temperature on it, and you mentioned it, is the run defense and the physicality and tackling in general. Is that something you see as fixable or something you have to just live with?
Well, I mean, usually, you don't see too much more improvement in that kind of stuff. I think it's livable. I think he's a smart kid too, as well. Like I said, not. His contextualization left you wanting more.
In what way?
In all areas, and kind of, obviously the contextualization is only centered around when it comes to tackles for loss, and as a cornerback, you're just not going to get a lot of those. You would. I'm interested to see what when some of these other sites like Pro Football Focus and all get more in depth into like missed tackles and all like that, to see what that number is and all. How many kind of technically how many run stops did he have? Good tackler, not great.
I'm not even sure I'd say good tackler. I think he's very much a work in progress. I think maybe it is fixable, but I think he's got a long ways to go. More really drag down guy and doesn't play to his size. But from the ball skills perspective, which you have to look at if you're Pittsburgh, what do you value? And right now you have to value ball skills and playmaking above all else, and you kind of have to live with the rest. And that's, if I can get someone that has ball skills and this guy does, then I'll deal with the rest, because that's the number one concern with this defense right now.
Let me before we move forward, let me also preface this, and I kind of laid this out as ground rules in my mock as well too. And being the fact that the Steelers, and we've written and talked about this quite a bit, the Steelers have a long history of drafting players, other than underclassmen, of course, who played in the senior college all-star games. So I try to stay dedicated to that, and really mainly the Senior Bowl, because of the Steelers' high propensity to pick players coming out of that game. So outside of the underclassmen that I have here, I stayed dedicated to that.
Yep, and he was at the Senior Bowl. I think he got hurt late in the process. Didn't play in the game, I don't believe, but he was there and had a couple good practices before. I think it was a hamstring pull, I want to say, that he went down with, and that knocked him out. So your other second-round pick was the guy you mentioned the other day, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the safety hybrid guy. I mean, you really see him as the Burnett replacement?
I think he can be. There's a lot of the further you dig into his tape, this is an exciting guy to watch. From all aspects, not only playing in the box, playing in the slot, playing a little bit outside as a corner, and even some free safety. It's all over in his tape, and he does a lot of it good, as well. When you're looking for a guy, look, I think his X's and O's, his football IQ is up there. Really seems like a good kid as far as I can tell. Really excited to watch this one go at the combine. I mean, this could be. I mean, this could be one of your top two or three testing safeties, and I think you should be disappointed if he's not, judging by his film. And yeah, I think this is a guy that could come in during his rookie season and give you the, I don't know, put an X number of dime snaps on it with him.
Was this your favorite pick in your mock? Because I feel like I hear more excitement in your voice about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson than I do the other guys.
It is because I like those versatile players, right. You know, and in this age of sub-package football, the more versatile of a guy that you can have, you know, as that nickel dime backer, so to speak, I think the better you are defensively. And I like this kid. I mean, what can I say? By the time this combine is over, maybe we're talking about him as a as a later part of the first round guy or early second round type guy. Once again, need to dig further into his stuff, but his contextualization, which I put up before I went to Florida on my trip, is impressive. And when you go through the regular 3 games on him, that's impressive as well.
Yeah, no, I remember being a real big fan of Josh Jones a couple of years ago for similar reasons, that versatility. Now he hasn't had a great NFL career in Green Bay, but maybe Gardner-Johnson's going to be a better prospect. I think probably a better athlete than what Josh Jones was. So
ball awareness, right? I mean,
yep.
Look, if this team loses, like it looks like they're going to lose Antonio and Le'Veon Bell, and we've talked about the lack of turnovers. They need playmakers on the back end. They need guys that can also be versatile. On the defensive side of football, and I really think that this could be a guy that would fit in all areas there.
Because with how much dime this team played last year and really kind of playing with a third safety, just even out of obvious pass situations, they played on 1st and 10, 2nd and 10. Teams are countering by just running the football, and you need these guys that can thump and take on blocks in the run game and do almost as good a job as an actual inside linebacker would, because teams are starting to counter, and they know that you're going to play dime and you're going to go sub, so they're going to go heavy and maybe try to force you to that safety instead of covering to take on a guard or take on a fullback in the hole, and that's what you need, and hopefully Gardner-Johnson could provide that. Your 3rd round pick, you finally get a receiver to address the Antonio Brown loss and the presumed trade here, Terry McLaurin from Ohio State, and you're looking for speed, you're looking for a big playmaker, and I assume that's the driving reason for why you mocked McLaurin.
Boy, you want to talk about maybe my 3 top draft current draft crushes, right now as we sit here this far out. It's probably these top 3, really 3 of these top 4 picks. Talking about Polite, talking about Gardner-Johnson, talking about McLaurin. McLaurin I knew absolutely nothing about before the Senior Bowl, but had a great week there. Some of that practice tape on him, just his ability to get off the line and ability to separate quickly within, say the first 12 yards, very impressive. And I still stand by that this might be DJ Chark 2019, right? I mean, a kid that probably wasn't utilized enough at Ohio State, and because, or at least, but from a statistical reception standpoint, and because of that, is probably going to suffer and have to wait to hear his name called until around round 3. He moved all over in that defense. There's some good breakdowns on a couple of those Ohio State fan sites, X's and O's too, talking about how he moved all over. Look, you want to talk about a touchdown producer inside the red zone. He had a knack for that at Ohio State. He had a knack, I think you remember the contextualization, the big plays and touchdowns that I put on the site, 2-3 weeks ago, not long after the Senior Bowl. This kid looks like he can do it all, and he even got some work in at the X. Obviously needs to become more developed in that area, but you and I have talked time and time again how if Antonio Brown leaves, they're going to need to probably do a better job of developing an X, and I think he could be that guy. Obviously, like I said, the stats aren't there, what you would think for a guy that played the amount of snaps that he did at Ohio State. But boy, when he did catch the ball, it was exciting to watch. And the couple of the tapes that you'll watch from a few of those Ohio State fan sites that are up on YouTube, he's not afraid to block, and we know that's a prerequisite of Steeler wide receivers over the years. They have to be willing to do the dirty work, and he certainly was willing to do that out on the edge.
Do you see McLaurin as a day one starter? Potentially?
Oh, wow. I think you can get him in there and get some snaps. I don't know, maybe about a day one starter, playing 50 snaps or 60 snaps, but I don't think it will take long to find a role for him.
Because that's why my one concern with waiting till the third round, especially with the trade in this scenario, so really your fourth pick with addressing the wide receiver position, is I think you might want to be a little bit heavier with trying to find that AB replacement, because you got to replace 1,100 snaps, and I'm a little worried if McLaurin isn't going to be that presumed day one starter, or at least you feel confident that he can be. Then what do you do in the meantime? That's my one question rattling in my head.
Well, obviously here too, I'm not, unless the Steelers draft him, I probably won't do this. But like I did with James Washington last year, going through every target that he had and really dissecting. Look, we have a large selection of Ohio State all 22 film from the last couple seasons that we can go through as well too. It's too early for me to say I would be. Yeah, it would be just a guess at this point if he could come in and be a day one starter there. But like I said, there's not a lot not to like about not only his production and his play the last couple seasons at Ohio State, but when you look at the talent that he went up against at the Senior Bowl and the things he was able to do with the footwork and all. And isn't this the kid that's supposed to run under 4.4?
He'll run fast. I'm not sure what exactly he's going to run. He'll run fast.
I thought I might be mixing, but I thought he was the one that said maybe going to be in the 4.3 range or something like that. I can't remember, but he's another one that we're going to be tracking, or at least I will be tracking closely at the Combine this week.
Yeah, and if they do draft McLaurin, I think going through his targets will take a lot less time than James Washington. So maybe you should root for that, help you out a little bit.
Oh, yeah, here's the other thing, and I think you've already picked this out as well, too, in your tape study. A great gunner on special teams.
Yeah, and that's really attractive too. To have that versatility, not a lot of starting receivers are playing special teams, but that was like Chark too. I think Chark played some special teams, and that was impressive. Your fourth round pick, you go inside linebacker with Terrell Hanks, who I had in the third round of my mock. I think a really good prospect. I don't want to be that guy, but I'll be that guy. I think fourth round's a little too low. I think he's gonna have a really good combine work. I think it's gonna push his stock up into at least day two, but certainly a good fit and a good need for the Steelers.
Yeah, and look, the further as I get into this thing, obviously the less tape I've watched on him, because I've been dedicated to really the top, 100 or so, I guess, players more than anything, and of course spending time on the contextualization and all. But he averaged nearly 100 tackles during a season during his college career, with 43 of those nearly 400 resulting in lost yardage. Recorded 8 interceptions during his college career, in addition to 14 pass breakups, and I think has some tackling issues that needs to be solved. But definitely a third to fourth round inside linebacker prospect. Maybe you can speak a little bit more, because I think maybe you've watched a little bit more tape on him than I have of how he would fit and how quickly he could fit.
Well, it's harder to say how quickly he'll fit. You'd have to talk to him and put him on the whiteboard and, kind of pick his brain about where his football IQ is at. I think he's a pretty instinctual guy, so that might suggest that he can come in right away. Maybe a little bit of a different bump in competition for him, not being a Power 5 guy. But yeah, someone that you can envision as a 3-down linebacker, someone that I mentioned on Friday show, or what was it, Monday show, or whatever, Friday show it was, that a guy that did it all, that had interceptions, that had sacks, that had tackles. I mean, the guy did everything, and you kind of get that little glimpse on the box score alone that this is a guy that was versatile and is capable and has tape of making plays everywhere, making impact plays. So, yeah, I like the pick. Like I said, I think he will go higher. I think he's going to have a really good combine workout. I think this league is starved for athletic off-ball linebackers that can run and cover and have sideline-to-sideline range. I think Hanks is one of those guys, and I think, you could see him as a very poor man's Ryan Shazier.
All right, well, fair enough.
All right, sixth round, kind of getting the late round picks here. Kalen Saunders, a D tackle from Washington, Illinois, who kind of, got a lot of press at the Senior Bowl, can do backflips, a really athletic guy. They put him on the edge sometimes in college, and a guy that I think even carried the football maybe a little bit too, caught a touchdown pass. So, kind of the opposite of Daniel McCullers in the sense of he's a big guy, but a really nimble and athletic guy for his size.
Yeah, small school guy as well, too, coming out of Western Illinois. Not a lot not to like about at least his attitude and the way he carried himself at the Senior Bowl. Obviously could have ran home for the back home for the birth of his baby, but instead chose to stay there and compete. The question is can he compete against better talent? At the NFL level. He obviously did what he was supposed to do and dominated at his level at Western Illinois. Coming in, probably going to, at least his pre-combine measurements, coming in right at 6'3", 18, so more of a defensive tackle than anything. More of a developmental guy, I think, but a guy that maybe you could use as a backup and help replace Daniel McCullers. I don't think you're going to get a lot out of him outside of a two technique guy. Not really a one gap penetrator in my view. Not a guy that you're going to ask to two gap or anything like that.
No, probably you're probably right in that assessment. But like I said, they did kind of move him around in college, so I think he's got that athleticism that he's played on the edge a little bit. The Steelers will move guys around in sub package. They will stand Hayward or two it up occasionally, and I think you could do maybe a little similar with Saunders. So I think he's an interesting guy, just a good athlete, and that's what you want on that D line. And gone are the days of the two gap Casey Hampton types. You need guys that are explosive off the ball and can move and can pass rush. And 6.5 sacks last year for him at 320, getting double teamed, I'm sure kind of speaks to that.
A couple other guys that I kind of considered in that defensive lineman spot there, if you will, somewhere later in this draft. Chris Slayton out of Syracuse is impressive. Just seen a little bit of tape on him already. Rennell Wren out of Arizona State is a guy that his athleticism and his measurables probably, and he should test really, really well at the combine. Probably going to have people jumping back into his tape to kind of find out maybe where was the production there. I think, but that's a guy I think the Steelers could potentially considered. A guy I briefly looked at is DeMarcus Christmas out of Florida State. I don't know how much you've watched on him and if you think he would be a fit in that defense. And I think another one, and I think maybe it's even a guy that you maybe mocked, Greg Gaines out of Washington.
Yep, I mocked him. Yeah, big interior plugger.
So those are some names I think potentially. Oh, and Armon Watts is another kid out of Arkansas, 6'5", 298. I have not watched really anything on him though.
Yeah, me neither. I haven't watched, was it Christmas, the FSU kid? I haven't seen him yet, but I've heard his name, and I'll have to look into him a little bit later. Your other 6th-round pick, you went tight end, Foster Moreau, who the Steelers reportedly met with at the Senior Bowl. Kind of just a very classic Steelers tight end, jack all trades, master of none, played in that LSU pro-style offense where you're putting, your hand in the dirt, and you're run blocking, kind of Jesse James-like. Is that kind of the vibe you got from Foster Moreau?
Yeah, and this is okay. I know about a few of these tight ends, and this is one of them.
Fair enough.
That state. Look, we try to be transparent on this. We get a late start on going through these draft prospects, and I think I was amazed more than anything how much I feel I know after this point in time, and it amazes me every year. I go from knowing virtually nothing about these prospects to, oh wow, okay, I know a lot about that guy now thanks to the time I'm able to dive in the evenings and look at the tape on these guys. Foster Moreau, a number 2 tight end, Nothing flashy, but what he does do, what he does do well, he does consistently well, if that makes sense. He's a guy that you can line up all over at the inner line of scrimmage as an H-back, put in, run those split zones with, can handle a little bit of those more athletic defensive ends from a pass rushing standpoint. Not huge separation as a pass route runner, but obviously too wasn't used a lot in that offense, and they probably could have used him a little bit more than he did. Not eye-popping receiving numbers at LSU. Really, he is what he is, and that's probably a day 3 tight end. And considering the Steelers are, Vance McDonald, we'll see what happens with Jesse James in the coming weeks, whether or not they're able to re-sign him. You're probably going to need another third tight end if you don't get one early in this draft, and Foster Monroe fits that bill.
Definitely. And like you described, Jesse James, basically, just that, can do it all, isn't great at one particular thing, but versatile, and, a guy that isn't going to be super flashy, but isn't going to hurt you in any area. So that makes sense. If he could be at the number 3, then that's an upgrade in my book over Xavier Grimble. With your 7th round pick, to round things out, you with a guy with an eye profile a little while back, Tony Pollard from Memphis. Really just call him an athlete. He kind of did a little bit of everything at school, played some running back, played some receiver. Definitely a good kick returner, though, an electric kick returner who had one of the best really careers in college football in the kick return game, I think, with, I want to say 7 kick return touchdowns. So I'll have to look at my profile, but an electric guy, but I kind of similar to that. I was a little underwhelmed by, a little straight line-ish, what's his defined role, but an intriguing option.
Yeah, and I must have missed when you put this profile up because I was, I had the name in place and did the tape study and had him in, started research a little bit more, and lo and behold, there's a profile of Tony Pollard on SteelersDepot.com. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about him than I can in just a brief. Look, this is Jalen Samuels 2019, right? A versatile guy. I struggle to find a lot of him functioning as a true running back, though, and really that was the kind of the thing with Jalen Samuels. You kind of saw him. Well, one thing we saw Pollard, or that I saw Pollard do that's similar to Samuels, is he ran some wildcat. There he was used out in the slot and really moved all over in that offense there. As you said, a very good kick returner at Memphis there. I think the question becomes how will he handle the transition to more of a true running back? And I think maybe you've watched a little bit more of him in that area than I have. How is he as a true lineup in the eye carry the football?
Well, you're right. He just didn't do it a whole lot. He really was a third-string running back. I know Memphis had some really good talent in that backfield. Darrell Henderson is going to be probably a potential day 2, definitely mid-round, draft pick that has a lot of talent. But again, he was a number 3 that was phased out of this offense quite a bit and didn't always get the football. So you're right that there are some similarities between him and Jalen Samuels in the sense that they are kind of jack of all trades, versatile guys, but I also see some pretty defined differences between those two. One, Pollard is a lot faster. Straight line speed's excellent. He'll test very well in the 40, but he's not a natural receiver. I thought Jalen Samuels really caught the ball cleanly, was kind of a natural at it, a hands catcher. Pollard's definitely a guy that double catches and fights the football and is struggling after the catch of getting upfield and securing the football. And then obviously what Pollard gives you in the return game is something Samuels does not. I think you draft Pollard with the idea of being a kick returner. Whatever else you get is kind of a bonus. But he's a straight line guy that's, got great, long speed, but is a little stiff. His protection needs work. Again, not a natural receiver. Really didn't run a ton of receiver routes, a little bit, but certainly not going to be his forte, and someone that struggles and to really catch the football cleanly. So I think you look at him as a returner, and anything else you get is going to be a bonus.
A lot of I saw a lot of bubble screens,
Yep.
In the tape that I looked at there. I think with him, look, when we do these mock drafts, being as how we've had the same regime in Pittsburgh, we try to play connect the dots with. We play Blue's Clues with these things and try to link certain things here. And being as how you went to Memphis, being as how Randy Fichtner has strong ties to Memphis, that made it kind of easier to connect the dots here as well too. If anybody knows a lot about Tony Pollard, it's probably Randy Fichtner at this point. And I'm not high. I'm not convinced on, or maybe I am high, but I'm not high or convinced that the Steelers will draft a running back this year. But I think if you do, and if you do it in the later rounds, I think you want a versatile player, and then with that versatility, I would expect some special teams contributions here with a running back, and obviously him being a kick returner. And I saw a little bit of punt and kickoff coverage there as far as special teams at Memphis. Didn't dive too deep into that, but looks like he's qualified to run up and down the field in that area. So that's why, because of his versatility, because of kind of, Jalen Samuels-esque, if that's a thing, because of Randy Fichtner and the connections to Memphis. That's why I went that area.
I thought if any of us were going to make a Blues Clues reference on this podcast, it'd be me, not you. But I tip my hat to you. Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, and I think that it's a fine 7th round pick. I had him as a 7th round priority UDFA type. Again, the concern with him is just he just wasn't involved in the offense. And the guys that have really quiet college careers offensively, does that ever get better in the NFL? It's pretty rare. There are exceptions like Alvin Kamara, but this is a guy that only had 2 career games, talking about Tony Pollard, of 10 or more carries, only 4 games with 5 or more receptions. They just didn't get the football in his hands too much. He did his return game thing. He did it really well. A 2017 season he had 4 kick return touchdowns, averaged 40 yards a kick. I mean, insane numbers there, basically record-setting stuff, but I just don't know how well it's going to translate to the NFL, especially in a league that is coming close to phasing out kick returns.
He's a guy that you throw in there and let compete,
Yep.
And obviously when you get into these 6th and 7th round picks, you're looking for guys that you think can help you and with some upside to them. I haven't really gone in depth at I know a lot about Justin Hill. I can tell you that. I mean, is Justice Hill?
Justice Hill.
Hill, from all that time of watching that Oklahoma State tape last year, he's an intriguing guy. I don't have a good feel of where he's gonna go at this point, but boy, he's sure. It was hard not to notice him when watching all that tape on James Washington and Mason Rudolph last offseason. In fact, I hate to. I mean, I think I've admitted it before. I became sort of an Oklahoma State fan. I watched so much of that tape.
Yeah. I know for me, Dave, whenever I finish my mock draft and I kind of sit on it for a day or two, I kind of think back, what would I have done differently? What did I miss? What need do I think I didn't dress or dress well enough? Do you have any thoughts there? If there was some position you thought, I should have done this a little differently or done, a different round or different position? Any kind of thoughts on where you might go for your next mock?
I do that 5 minutes after I push the submit button.
Fair enough.
I wish that I hadn't turned it in. Sort of like my homework when I was in.
You didn't do your homework. Let's be honest.
I did something. I turned something in there.
Okay.
It wasn't great. But yeah, I mean, I constantly have a horrible feeling after I push the submit button on these. I think I could have done better, maybe researching some of these later tight ends.
Yeah.
For one, I'm not married to Pollard. I'm not married to a running back late. I think instead of going defensive tackle with Kalen Saunders, I could have maybe researched a little bit more, maybe more of a guy. A more position flexible guy,
Mm-hmm.
I could have watched more tape on Hanks, and who's the other kid out of North Carolina State?
Pratt, Jermaine
Pratt. Yeah, another one there. I don't have a good grasp of the deeper inside linebacker class, which really I don't think is as deep as people are saying, right? You have a lot of guys that you have. To me, it reminds me of kind of what Kevin Colbert said last year about you have the top end. You have a lot of guys that
mm-hmm.
specialize in things.
Yeah, that's fair, and I think it's probably usually the case.
So when you don't address inside linebacker in these mocks in the first round, where do you go?
Yeah.
That's I think what I need to do a better job of figuring out here in the coming weeks and months. I'm not disappointed where I got McLaren and my wide receiver choice. I'm not disappointed at all with the Gardner Johnson pick. I'm not married to Amani. It was kind of this peg fits in this hole.
Yeah, the need and the availability kind of fit.
And with the whole first round thing, with Polite, I've already spoken to several times. Where is he in this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Steelers need a young edge rusher. Period.
Yep.
So I would just say that there's always the questions about what your first pick is in these mocks, and I've created sort of a bias, I think, against DeAndre Baker some because of his age, and I shouldn't do that. So I want to go back through his tape a little bit more because I think he is a kid that could potentially be on the board there at 20 overall.
Yeah, no, I like Baker, and I heard I think it was Matt Miller that said he's going to run faster than expected at the combine. I thought he was pretty fast on tape. I thought he was kind of a long speed guy. So I guess that's a good segue to go into a brief combine preview. It's going to start up. I think the first day testing is Friday morning.
Where do you think I should have done better?
Well, I mean, you have the thought process in it. I mean, like I said, I thought receiver. My concern, I guess, would just be this: you have inside linebacker in the fourth, receiver in the third, with the extra draft pick to play around with, some potential starting positions of need that guys that may not start day one right away, especially at receiver with McLaurin. That is he going to be that guy? And if not, if he's not that guy with a weak receiver class in free agency, who's going to be your X receiver day one? I guess that'd be my biggest question coming out of this mock draft.
Okay, fair enough.
But hey, my mock, I tear it apart too, and I already want to do 10 different things compared to the first one. So good segue into the combine preview. Just a real brief one we'll do here, Dave. What are your kind of initial impressions? Again, I think they're starting Friday. We're going to do Friday's podcast on Thursday evening just to kind of work best for our schedule. It's a great time of year though, So is there any one player or any one position that you're looking at Indy, for the Steelers consideration?
Yes.
Okay, I kind of walked myself into that one.
Look, I mean, we know there's more players here that we don't know enough about than players that we do. I'm going to have a one player I'm diving into that I hope to have a contextualization done today is the kid Lane, the cornerback out of Michigan State. This is the time of year right now where more and more people are getting deeper into players, and we're thinking, hey, this is a guy that nobody's talking about that should be first or second round guy, and I think Lane is kind of that soup du jour or soup of the week, right? So he's a guy I want to dig into, interested to see move around. Obviously, with these edge guys, always interesting to see how some of them do in the dropping phase. I like that Ben Banagoo out of TCU, a little bit older, and I think I've already done a contextualization on him. I want to see how he tests in this thing, how the 3-cone, how the 20 shuttle time is on him. Who's another one of these edge guys? Obviously, Polite will have the eye on. I'm trying to think. Jordan Brailford is another guy I looked at quickly out of Oklahoma State right after the Senior Bowl. I think that's going to be interesting to watch go through the paces in here. And then obviously the small school kid in Jalen Ferguson, going to be fun looking at. I think, I don't know, Justin Hollins to me, I don't know what you think about Hollins, just has more of a feel of a 4-3 base end, as does the Mississippi State kid Montez Sweat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really want to focus my attention on the cornerback group, and that's probably because I've looked at a million corners already this year, and that's probably the position I feel the most comfortable with. But there's just a lot of names, and I want to see how these guys run, especially some of the long, lean types like Lonnie Johnson from Kentucky, Amon Marshall from USC. I think he'll test pretty well. Guys like Kendall Sheffield from Ohio State, I heard is going to test really, really well. We'll see how that translates. Hamp Cheevers from Boston College, Rock Ya-Sin from Temple. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, just some guys that who's going to separate themselves with that athletic testing. Isaiah Johnson from Houston was a former wide receiver, the turn corner. So, I mean, there's just a ton of names that some guys I like, some guys I'm kind of mixed on. I think the combine's going to help me kind of decide, or at least better decide, who's going to fit where in my rankings.
I think Rock Ya-Sin is a very intriguing guy, right? 1 year of really, was at Temple 1 year, right?
That'd be Presbyterian transfer.
And then obviously the transfer and did what he was supposed to do at that level. Is there enough on tape? I mean, he's probably going to test well. I mean, you would think he would. the Steelers typically don't go after, especially really across the board, guys that didn't play a lot in division, in the top division there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he'll test okay. I don't think he'll test great. I think maybe he's like a 4.5-4 kind of guy. It depends on how much these guys test and train. But I like him. I don't really love him though. So you said I heard could even be a first-round pick. I think I saw one of the big mocks that said a first-round pick.
Charlie Casserly, mocked him at the end of the first. I'm with you. I'm with you. I think the hype. I think the hype on him's just. And look, I haven't gone through all of much of his tape at all, but I did try to go through and start building a contextualization of his stuff at Temple and the limited amount of YouTube tape that's available on Temple, and I mean I'm not seeing the first round hype on him.
Yeah, I don't see a great athlete. I don't see somebody that was a huge ball hawk. I think he's got good ball skills, but I don't think he's fantastic. I think he's a really poor tackler. I think he's a little stiff. Getting the starting experience. Yeah, just a day 2 guy. He's not day 1 for me.
I had a feeling Devin Bush was going to magically start shrinking on us, and I think that process. I'm not. What was he listed? 5'11"?
Yeah, 5'11".
Well, pre-combine, even though these are round numbers here, we'll get the official numbers here in a day or two or maybe a little bit longer than that, being as a position group. But of course, by the end of next week, we'll have it. His pre-combine height and weight: 5'10", 225.
Yeah, he'll probably come in around 5'10". If he's listed 5'11" some places, then usually they're a little on the tall side. So that off-ball linebacker group, you're looking for the athletes. Who can fly? Who's going to wire you with a 40 time? You need somebody that has that athletic profile in their 40 time, in their vertical, in their broad jump, in their 3-cone. Is that going to be David Long from West Virginia? I've heard got some hype, but he's also on the small side, listed at 5'11", 221. Voshawn Joseph from Florida. T.J. Edwards from Wisconsin. So, are any of those guys going to separate themselves? That's a big question in my mind.
You every year you do the what do you call that series where you take the combine numbers and what the Steelers generally
just what they look for, kind of.
Yeah, basically. what they kind of look for and all. Devin, not even seeing his his 3-cone and 40 and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't fit with the height and weight.
With Devin Bush, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't too many 5'11" linebackers in general. I mean, Sean Spence is one example you can point to. I think he was 5'11", but, on that alone, Bush is going to be an outlier, but he'll be an outlier for pretty much every team. I mean, again, there are not many 5'11", top 5'10" linebackers in football right now.
All right, as far as those kind of versatile safeties go, I think Nasir Adderley is going to be a guy a lot of people are talking about. And have already talked about this offseason when it comes to players to watch. Obviously, Gardner Johnson out of Florida will be another one there. I think some people have asked us to dive into some Amani Hooker tape, right?
Yeah, I think it was Daniels did a profile on him and came away pretty impressed by him.
Deontay Thompson out of Alabama is another one.
He's not going to work out, though. He had, I think, a ligament issue.
All right. Anybody else out of that safety group?
Yeah, there's some really good names. Darnell Savage Jr., Taylor Rapp is a big hitter, box guy that can fly. Jonathan Abram from Mississippi State, just a psycho. He's just an insane guy that is as physical as they come in college football. I looked at Mike Bell from Fresno State last night that, he's got to work on his tackling. His tackling's atrocious. His technique's really poor. Is that fixable, and can that improve his tackling? I think it can. I think you do probably see him more as a free safety type, but it's the athleticism there. He's a little stiff. I don't know about the long speed, but the ball skills are certainly there. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, as you mentioned earlier, Will Harris from Boston College I like. So, there's going to be some names there.
The defensive lineman, Isaiah Buggs is a name that I keep circling back to.
I think it was in Tom's mock draft, right? I think a 4th-round pick.
And I think that might be a little bit rich for him. But, I mean, he had some production there. Now, it was because of the guys he was playing against. They're interested to learn more about him, not only his measurables throughout this next week, but digging a little bit deeper into his tape. I think we already hit on some of the other guys that kind of fit the Steelers mold, if you will. We talked about Saunders. We talked about Chris Slayton. Rennell Wren should. I mean, it's going to be disappointing if Wren doesn't have a nice combine here. Christmas is another guy that I think we've talked about. And who else am I missing out of this group here?
I like Dalen Mack from A&M, former running back in high school. Should test interesting. And
did I mention Armon Watts is the other one out of Arkansas? Yeah. I think is a name here. Wide receivers, geez, probably the group that I've spent the less amount of time with so far. That I will tell you this. I did a peek on Craig Whiteside out of Stanford. He's got some fun tape.
Yeah, red zone threat for sure.
Can get some separate. Go turn on his game against Notre Dame. Marquise Brown. A lot of people are going to be talking about him. Hollywood out of Oklahoma because of his relation. Is he one that's on the list that maybe not going to work out?
Yeah, he's got Liz Frank. He's not going to do pro day or combine.
Well, that's disappointing because I think he could put on a show there. Obviously, the Mississippi State kid, who I'm not, is he another one?
Mississippi?
I mean,
Mississippi or Mississippi State?
Mississippi. The kid with the tremendous muscles.
Yeah, Metcalf.
Is he going to go?
I believe so. I don't know that for sure, but I think he's going to test.
He's one to watch. Also, in Kill Harry out of Arizona State. Is one. Kelvin Harmon is a name I think popped up in one of you guys' mock drafts too.
Tom's, I think, first round, yeah. Want to look at him. Riley Ridley from Georgia, Debo Samuel from South Carolina, two guys I really like.
And then I think we had a profile went up today on Stanley Morgan out of Nebraska, who I've yet to watch any tape on. Hunter Renfrow is going to be a guy that's going to be hard not to like. Debo Samuel, obviously. And a guy that Bill Belichick will have close eyes on is...
Oh, I was going to say Renfro, but are you going to say Isabella or something?
Yeah, Isabella.
Yeah, those guys definitely feel like that Patriot fit. And then I'll throw in Emmanuel Hall from Missouri, too, that kind of is that deep threat that may run one of the fastest 40s of anyone at the Combine. That could be a potential, low 4.4, high 4.3 kind of guy. So want to look at him. And then I've heard some people hype up this Jazz Ferguson from Northwestern State, small school kid, 6'5", 223. Apparently he's turned in some really good pre-combine testing. We'll see if that's just hype or if that's legit, but Jazz Ferguson's a name that might come to mind.
Just for the name alone, I'm interested to get into some tape on some little Jordan Humphrey.
I know. It's one of my favorite names in the draft, him and Ham Cheevers.
Little Jordan, 6'4", 220. Ain't nothing little about Jordan. But I don't know if you've looked much at him. But what about, did you just mention Anthony Johnson out of Buffalo?
I didn't, but I know Daniel wrote about him the other day. I think he came away liking him. So check out Daniel's profile on the site.
Boy, what can we say about the work you guys are doing on these things?
We're almost at 100 profiles, I think. So really exciting. Hopefully we can get to 200, 250 by the end of this thing.
I mean, it just you turn around and when I'm going through this mock, I'm thinking, man, you guys have really got the wheels down here. Josh Carney, Daniel, obviously, Tom Mead, and Andy as well too. So great work to those guys. Keep it up because I think we're way ahead pace right now, and it's allowing me more time to do these what do you think about these contextualizations that I'm doing?
I like him. I think it's a good way to go that extra level into a prospect instead of just the overall profile to really kind of give that look. And I think the people really like and checking these things out too. And especially going to be huge for if the Steelers draft any of these guys that you have contextualized. So that's just an immediate thing. Let's get, waist deep into the tape here and really look at the individual plays that this guy made.
All right. How do you feel about your knowledge on this class heading into the Combine?
Oh, that's always a little shaky because, like you said, we get a late start. We aren't a dedicated draft site, so it goes just from straight end of the season into the draft. And I'm juggling free agency right now. I've taken a couple days, a little bit off from the draft stuff to really focus in and hone in on free agency with that coming up. But Combine's a great time to really get exposure on these guys, to hear the analysts talk about them, to see some other opinions and just kind of broaden my horizons a little bit. But I'm happy with where I'm at.
Yeah, I am too. And like I said, I'm always kind of amazed when we get into this time of year, looking back at how far I've come, because we literally go from nothing to to here we are. And, I think a lot of the names that I don't think it's going to be a surprise. A lot of the names, how many names do you think we've thrown out here in this podcast? 50?
Oh, yeah, at least 50.
I think there's a good shot that a lot of those names we talked about are going to be Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, and again, like you said earlier, the benefit of having Colbert and Tomlin in place and that stability is that, you follow that pro day circuit, and you look at the interviews, you look at the type of player, you can really kind of whittle down the list of, okay, these are the guys that we assume they're going to have serious interest in, and I think we generally get it right.
All right, and for those following alone on your score sheets at home, Kevin Colbert is scheduled to hold his annual pre-combine press conference Wednesday. Tomorrow at around between 11 and 11:30. We'll be covering everything he has to say there, and if he jumps on Sirius XM NFL Radio after that, we'll bring you all that he has to say there. I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of questions about Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and Ben Roethlisberger and unquestioned leadership and all that kind of stuff. He's already, I think he'll recap his thoughts. He does it every year. He usually starts it off talking about the depth of this year's draft class, and I'm not even, will he rule out drafting a quarterback this year?
I think I'll rule it out.
Okay. All right. So we'll get deeper into that. And obviously, any reports of the Steelers meeting with any of these players during the process, we'll pass along to you on the site as well, too. We already have the measurement page up. You can find a link to that on Twitter. That'll be front and center on the site. Really probably starting later on today and on. We appreciate if you would pass around that link on the Twitter machine as well, too. Alex and I spend countless hours in front of the television and spreadsheets entering these numbers in as they go to try to give you the most up-to-date, complete set of combine data that you'll find anywhere on the Google and the internets.
All right, Dave, just a little bit of time left in today's show. Before we get to some reader emails, I know you wanted to talk about the updated odds for, the teams with a chance of landing Antonio Brown. And I don't know how much stock you put into it. I put kind of little stock into it. But the Colts right now are actually the favorite, which is kind of a new team I haven't heard too much, but I think you talked about them the other day. But any reaction to the odds makers?
I think the byproduct of me writing that post and the quote-unquote exercise that it produced was more helpful as to maybe whittling down to what I believe are the 4 or 5 most probable teams to trade for Antonio Brown, in addition to coming to a raw conclusion that I'll be surprised that other than the Oakland Raiders, that they get a first-round draft pick from. The Colts, I don't understand really why they are the favorite according to mybookie.ag, a sponsor of the Terrible Podcast. Let me throw that out there. And based mainly because of what Chris Ballard said during his end of the season wrap-up press conference. He stressed how important culture is right now under fairly new head coach Frank Reich, and how that's going to play a big part of their offseason process when it comes to the draft and free agency and potentially any trades that they make there. So just based on Chris Ballard's comments alone, I'll be shocked. And look, they have this guy over there named T.Y. Hilton. Have you heard of him?
He's pretty good.
He's pretty good. So you got another wide receiver over there, and if AB comes to town, you're probably going to have to give him more money. So how would that sit with T.Y. over there?
It's true.
So why upset the apple cart there? The 49ers is second on the list, and I understand AB wants to go there, but I keep doubling back to GM John Lynch and just thinking of all the off-the-field problems this organization has had over the years with guys like Alden Smith and Ray McDonald, Bruce Miller, and Ahmad Brooks and Tremaine Brock and Reuben Foster. I mean, it's not easy to build the list there. And sure, John Lynch is kind of new in town, but overall. But you would think that, man, to me, why even? I mean, and look, they need a wide receiver. I'm not going to doubt that, but I just don't understand why you would want to go that route. I mean, I'm not going to go with the definitive, no, that's not going to happen, but I'm not sure if I'm the 49ers I would go that way. The New York Jets, Oakland Raiders are next on the list. I guess you could consider Jets a possibility, but do you really want to pair Antonio Brown with Sam Darnold? And do you really want Antonio Brown in a big media market watching every move that he makes both on and off the field, such as New York? The guy with Antonio Brown as much, I'm not sure you had time to learn the playbook by the time reading all the stories every day that'll be on him in the New York papers there. I don't know why you'd want to go that way, you know? Oakland Raiders, of all the teams out there that have the draft capital, have the need, have the past trade relationships with the Steelers, have a head coach in place who probably thinks that he can tame the wild beast known as Antonio Brown from a diva standpoint, I think it's the Raiders. And
yeah.
I mean, would you agree?
Probably, but I also think, to the larger point, I know you talked about culture and team stress, good culture, and every team does that. But as I said before, every team believes that they have the right culture to make it work, to turn the guy around, to fix the guy, to be able to assimilate the guy into the locker room. So I think that's an important point, but I think a lot of teams lie to themselves and say, yeah, we got the right group, we can make it work, even when they can't.
They're going to deal one of them first-round picks to do something, I think. They're talking about the Raiders. So how they finagle in the draft and along those lines is going to be interesting to watch. They have, 5 of the top 66 overall selections in this draft. If you're going to get a first-round draft pick from any team for Antonio Brown, I think that's the team right there. So the Bills, man, once again, young quarterback, second-year head coach, is that right? I guess you could, and then there was a report by Jeremy Fowler, I think last week or week 4, saying this Kevin Colbert don't want to trade to an AFC East team. I'm not, if the price is right, I think he would send him to a team like the Bills or the Jets or the Dolphins. I'm not convinced he'd want to send him to the Patriots, and I'm not convinced the Patriots would try to trade for him there. So can the Bills potentially be a wild card? Maybe. Arizona Cardinals. I mean, they have the locker room in place with veterans such as Larry Fitzgerald and Patrick Peterson, guys that could help keep Antonio Brown in line. How much will Cliff Kingsbury and his young quarterback Josh Rosen and all? I mean, how much will Cliff Kingsbury push for a guy? And if they did, they're not going to give up their first overall pick, which is a second round their first overall selection in this year's draft. They're not going to give up for Brown. So then would they give up their second round pick as compensation there? Denver, yeah, right. To me, that's not going to happen. You throw the Denver Broncos in that classification of the Colts, in my opinion, when it comes to culture. And look, Mike Munchak, I'm sure he's told Vic Fangio all about Antonio Brown. I think the Detroit Lions is an interesting team in here. They have a veteran quarterback in Matthew Stafford. Brown obviously played at Central Michigan. Not that that means too overly much, but if head coach Matt Patricia was willing to sign off on it, I guess I could envision the Lions trading, but I don't think they'd give up their first round draft pick, which is 8th overall, to do it. So once again, I think you're dealing with a second round selection there. To round out the list, the Houston Texans. This gets back into the we already have a wide receiver making a lot of money. Why are you going to bring in another one and pay him even more? DeAndre Hopkins would be upset if you brought in Brown and paid him even more money. So for that reason alone, I can't see the Texans trading for him. Rounding out the list as far as the odds go is the New England Patriots. And yeah, right. Colbert's going to trade Antonio Brown to the Patriots. And then the field at plus 400. I think you brought up the Carolina Panthers. Thinking the possibility there, I'll nod my head and go along with that. I think the Washington Redskins could be a dark horse in all this. Jay Gruden on the hot seat there. Who's their quarterback going to be? Whatever quarterback they decide on, who's that quarterback going to throw to this year? So I think when talking about the Redskins, I think Daniel Snyder and Bruce Allen and some of those guys could have their hands twisted to potentially trade for Antonio Brown. I'm not buying this talk about the Green Bay Packers potentially trading for Antonio Brown, nor am I buying Peter King thinking that Bruce Arians would want Antonio Brown. I don't know where he got that from. I expect better. That's my default line now. I expect better out of so and so. I expect better out of Peter King to link Antonio Brown to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid. He had T.O. Why does he want to go through that stuff again? So I think with that, as I said, I think the biggest takeaway from all this is going to be about maybe 3 or 4 teams, and Kevin Colbert already said 3 or 4 teams have already called him about trading for Antonio Brown. Unless it's the Oakland Raiders, I'm going to be amazed if it's a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We'll see what happens. Like I said, the combine is definitely the spot to be for those draft talks and trade talks to start to kick up. They just with the odds maker, I just saw a lot of AFC teams. I think 5 of the first 6 teams were AFC, and I just think it's not impossible to go AFC, but I think this team's going to prefer NFC, and that's kind of my guess. That's why I've looked at Carolina. I think Detroit is definitely an interesting option. Maybe we should get talked about a little bit more too.
All right, where are we now?
I think we should just go to some reader emails here to round out the show.
All right. All right, to the email box we go. We'll start with Jason Higgins. Hey, Dave and Alex, first love the show and the insight. So here's my question. If all the top-tier defensive players are off the board at 20 and a player like T.J. Hawkinson is there, do you take him 20 to add quality and future to the position? I think he, in particular, he could add value in offense as lacking playmakers now. I love Vance, but he has trouble staying on the field with injuries. I guess it's not hard from a best player available standpoint to find fault with that. Look, I mean, Jesse James, even if you re-sign Jesse James, it's not going to be a huge albatross around your neck or whatnot, to prevent you from bringing in a guy like Hawkinson and trying to move forward from him. I mean, Vance is obviously going to be your number one guy to start the season. By losing AB and Bell, you're going to need some offensive weapons maybe, and Steelers like to run quite a bit of that 21 personnel. I'm not going to totally discount it, no.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's unlikely. I mean, to think that they're all the top defensive players are going to be gone is pretty, improbable. I mean, depending on what the board looks like. But I agree with the idea of, getting rid of AB. You're not going to replace him with one guy. It's got to be a multi-pronged approach, both of internal guys and new guys to the roster. So I can understand that standpoint. Well, do I think it's likely? It's very unlikely, but I'm not going to say it's impossible. That's a very Kevin Colbert answer. You just have to see what happens.
All right, from Chad Burns. Writes in, hey, Dave and Alex. 1, what are your thoughts on the Steelers targeting these 4 free agents that likely will not be franchised? Pierre Desir, John Brown, Telvin Coleman from the Falcons, and Shane Ray from Denver. Pierre, look, let me reemphasize. I don't care who you tell me you want to sign. Generally, I have no problem with it as long as this is a 1-year minimum salary benefit contract. But with that said, I think Desir's probably going to demand a little bit more than that, maybe, right, Alex?
A lot more than that, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they've had opportunities to sign him in the past, right?
With Desir?
Right.
Well, yeah, but I think this was really a breakout year for him, so I think you do look at him in a little different light than you might have in the past.
All right, so what do you think? I mean, would he be a guy that you potentially target on what's he going to earn? $3 million, $2 million, $4 million?
No, I think it'll be a lot more than that. I mean, I think I have to look up some more information. I studied him pretty hard, though, in my free agent preview that I've been working on for a couple weeks now. I think you're looking at many, $6 to $8 million maybe per year with the way the corner market is and demand that exists and coming off the strong year that he had. I liked his tape, though. I really was impressed by the turnaround he's had in his career. A small school guy from Lindenwood that really didn't do much early, but really impressed. So I watched John Brown, too. I think that price might be a little too high just because the receiver market is poor, but I get why you're saying Brown. I really haven't watched Tevin Coleman. I don't think they're going to make that big of a move at running back. And the fourth name was
Shane Ray.
Shane Ray. Yeah, I've kind of teased him before. I know they looked at him coming out of Missouri, had a pro day dinner with him. The career's underwhelmed. He's had wrist problems and lack of production. Maybe, but probably not.
If you go after Ray, it's got to be a minimum deal.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty cheap. I know Shaq Barrett you like, but I heard Shaq Barrett might get paid too. So I don't think he's gonna come in as a number 3 for pretty cheap.
Right. I guess of the names on the list of the likelihood would probably be Pierre Desir.
I think you're gonna pay for him.
Did they bring him in pre-draft visit?
I have a list of it. I don't know if they did or not. Let me check. I've broken it down into guys I like, pre-draft visits, and Tomlin's Virginia Beach guys. That's the way I've divvied up this list, because there's always a couple. There's Shark and Hunter and Taj Boyd.
That goes back to that Blues Clues that I talked about, right?
Sure. No, I don't think they did a pre-draft visit with him. I won't divulge the list of names that I have on there, but all right, I'll give the list of names that are pre-draft visits that are free.
Don't give it all away. Yeah,
right.
tease some for the site there. He ends this. If you had to choose between these 3 free agents, cornerbacks, who do you like the best? Kareem Jackson, 31. I can tell you right now, 31 is a no-no with Steelers defense. Paying them any kind of money. If you read Steelers Depot and know the history, unless they can sign Kareem Jackson for the minimum, the Blues Clues say that's a no-no. Ronald Darby, who's coming off, that's an interesting name, coming off the torn ACL, or Pierre Desir, 28 years old, 1 good year production.
Yeah, Darby's still on my list, but I would be leaning pretty heavily Desir right now, just because of where Darby's at health-wise. The Steelers have not had really success taking flyers on guys with injuries, and look at Darius Greens and guys like that. So I'd probably go Desir.
All right, looks like you got one from David Georgiana. Thank you for reading on this on the pod. I really appreciate the response for you and I, because I keep it shorter. Okay, no, you're saying he was thanking us for reading his previous question. You're welcome, for sure. Let's see what else we have in here. From Daniel Wilson. Hello, fellas. Could you see the Steelers signing 26 and creating a 3-headed monster to control the clock and keep their poor defense off the field, with opposing defense going with more defensive backs to stop the pass? Steelers could do more of what the Ravens and the Patriots do by running the ball. Since 84 should be gone, it's going to be harder for Juju and Washington to win their matchup once teams start to stay in their base packages. It could spill out and get creative with Jalen and/or 26 Le'Veon Bell to slot to get them matched up on a linebacker. What do you think? I think the ship has sailed on Le'Veon Bell. That's what I think.
Me too. He's not coming back.
I just don't see how. Unless his market's just so flat, I don't see how. It'd be a good problem to have if he is back. I just don't see how that happens there. From Randy Hunt. What up, DNA? Love the show and the site. Thank you, Randy. All the talk I keep hearing is about waiting to see which teams are going to pitch to us for Brown. What is the likelihood that we actually do the pitching to other teams? I don't think you go out there on the street corner, with the jar of pencils in the cup, right?
There's an analogy I don't understand. A jar of pencils?
Lord, you're so young.
Yeah, that's over my head.
What's going to happen to you when you get married?
Oh, God. Well, let me get a girlfriend. Let me get a girl to talk to me. Leave my house.
We need to work on that. No, maybe we don't. Take away.
Thanks for the support.
Anybody got a sister they want to hook Alex up with there in Western PA? I can feel him blushing through the Skype machine right now here. Let's see. For example, and I get this particular scenario is a long shot for various reasons, but what if we got aggressive and pitched to Jacksonville, offering Brown and an early mid-rounder for Ramsey? Look, you invite more problems with Jalen Ramsey. It'd be tough to lose Brown and an early pick. Having talent like Ramsey on the field would literally improve the play of just about every other defensive player position. I just cannot see Jalen Ramsey in this locker room. I just can't, and having to pay them the money and on top of it. In short, just curious on your thoughts on us being the aggressor in this and potentially sacrificing a bit of our capital to make a splash move. Kevin Colbert, I visualize Kevin Colbert answering draft calls and say, "This is what we want." I envision them not being very, very long phone calls and saying, "Call me back if you maybe want to come off of this third rounder for Martavis Bryant." Other than that, we're perfectly comfortable in making Dave Bryant at Steelers Depot look right and say that the Steelers will absolutely not be dealing Martavis Bryant. Now, if you want to make Dave Bryant look like a fool, call us back with that third rounder.
Yeah, I mean, what happened with Oakland was that they kept calling Colbert. They started with like a fifth. I think was Colbert hinted at, and Colbert kept saying no. We're comfortable with Bryant, and then they got to a point where they offered the third, and you're just like, okay, can't turn that one down. So I think generally teams are going to come after you because they know that AB's on the block, and really, if you're Pittsburgh, you want teams to call you for a position of leverage. Well, if you're not reaching out to them, they have the leverage. They're going to be able to start setting the table, and if they're calling you, you can start setting that table. And I know negotiate, you'll go back and forth. I mean, there's that whole dance, but generally speaking, let them call you so you can, it doesn't sound as desperate or as needy, I guess, as if you called them. So again, you'll go to the combine, you'll talk, it'll be a mutual thing, and that's kind of how the wheels start turning. There's already some interest right now. I really think after the combine, you're going to start to really hear some more concrete talk and speculations about team and value.
All right, from John Caldarelli. Hi, Dave and Alex. Two players I've studied and would love as Steelers is Ed Oliver, defensive lineman out of Houston, and T.J. Hawkinson, tight end out of Iowa. Both are intense and would look great in the black and gold. Ed Oliver will probably be gone as a top 10 pick, quick as a cat and powerful disruptor. Some even say he could play middle linebacker. Can you imagine? Hawkinson can do it all, blocking, stretch the field, great hands, could be a great mismatch as additional red zone target. Can you imagine 3 tight end formation, which includes Jesse James? If we get an additional first-round pick, perhaps one of these could be chosen. What are your thoughts? Look, without going the whole he won't be there thing, which is a cardinal rule of mine, there probably not be many people think Ed Oliver will be there, right?
Yeah, and I'm not, I know with the sub package and guys moving around that you could find a home for Ed Oliver, but you got to have a plan for him because he is kind of a tweener. I mean, where exactly are you going to play him, especially in this defense? Just you have to answer that question before you start selling on Ed Oliver.
All right, from Robert Noonan. Hi, Dave. Listening to TP Terrible Podcast. What about the Steelers can get for AB? You know what they can get. Pay the $2.5 million roster bonus and give him a choice. He either plays and we save the $17 million salary cap, where he sits out like a goofball, and Le'Veon Bell, and they collect his $11.7 million signing bonus. You just can't take the cap hit for a couple of second rounders. What do second rounders pay in the draft? $600,000 to $1.5 million. Make the F word pay. Ooh, he slid in a dirty word. It's going to be painful to repay almost $12 million that he's already probably spent. Look, Robert, I know you're not a huge AB fan at this point. I understand Kevin Colbert coming out and saying, look, we're not just going to give AB away either. I get that, but on the flip side, I think what's best for the organization is try to get the most of what you can for him right now. Now, by most of what, obviously, there better be a second or third rounder and maybe another pick or maybe another player involved in all this. Can you pay that $2.5 million roster bonus to buy you some time until the draft? Sure you can. In the grand scheme of things, realistically, the $2.5 million in potential dead money, if it buys you time to get better compensation, have at it. But do you really want this team to go through Antonio skipping OTAs, Antonio potentially sitting out training camp even though he's going to get fined for him trying to make a point, and all the distraction and the 55 articles on SteelersDepot.com talk about what all players have said about Antonio Brown not being there? I just don't think it's worth it. I just think you take what you can get for him between now and the draft, and you move on. The guy is a goofball, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I mean, as Tomlin said, you want volunteers, not hostages. And I get the principle out of the idea of, you're not going to let AB dictate what happens to him and kind of, hold this franchise hostage in a sense. But at the end of the day, your principle has to be what's best for the team. And I don't know how it's going to work going forward. If you keep AB, I think it'll just become more of a malcontent and more of an issue, and it's going to get worse and worse. And that's going to have even bigger consequences. So, It's a tough spot to be in. No one says it's a good situation. No one says it's a spot you would like to be in, but it's just the reality, and you can either fight it or you can just make the best of it.
From Mark Chapman, I guess Mr. Kraft showed Tom Brady what real deflated balls look like. Oh, no!
Hey-o.
No, hey-o! Mark, no, you didn't. Yeah, I did that on Twitter, so what the heck. We haven't talked about that. Thoughts on Bob Kraft choosing the asterisk selection at the bathhouse in Florida, or at
Okay.
the Asian spa in Florida. That's way over your head, isn't it?
It is, but I get what you're saying here.
You've never had a table shower, Alex? Don't blush on the podcast.
Oh my goodness, that's why I want to talk about Bob Kraft, because then we're talking about this. No, I haven't followed it as closely in recent days. Do you think he's have to sell the team? Do you think it's going to come to that?
Man, I mean, you made. I mean, you look across these leagues and some of the things that have happened, and when the whole slave issue and all that's involved in all this, and I don't. It's gonna look, Roger. I don't want to be Roger Goodell right now. I'll tell you that. I think it could come to that. I mean, he's obviously got to face some sort of something here.
But if Jimmy Haslam gets to keep the Browns after everything he's done with his business company,
with the rebate, I mean, truck stop rebates and slavery.
Was he federally prosecuted? No, I mean, it depends exactly what Kraft is. If they're connecting him to the human trafficking side of it, then that's a heinous thing. That's a whole different level. If it's just the solicitation of prostitution, that is a different thing than the human trafficking side of it.
Optics.
No, I hear you. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't. It's possible. I agree, it's possible. But I don't know where Goodell's gonna land on this.
You got all that money. Prostitution is legal out here in Las Vegas. So is marijuana.
Right. Didn't he come in at 11 a.m.? 11 a.m., dude. Lord.
a little pre-lunch quickie there, huh?
Yeah, for real.
Oh Lord, what a mess. At least it's I reached out on Twitter to Willie McGinnis for a comment, but couldn't get one.
Shocking.
I think we hit on that at the end of the last podcast there. Okay, Antonio Brown's contract. This is, let's see, signed a contract extension. This is from James Krebs. It's my impression AB signed a contract extension in 2017. It was front-loaded in bonuses, but leaving him to live on a meager $12 million per year in 2019, 2020, and 2021. It's suspected he has spent his bonus and now feels that he should be able to tear up his contract whenever he is in the non-bonus years of the contract. Why should he be forced to live on $12 million a year? So let's get traded and start all over with a new contract and a new signing bonus. Sadly, it was always about the money. Antonio's motivation has always been his stats and his money, and of course stats translate into money. In 2011, we saw the emergence of the Young Money Group, the name given to the threesome of Mike Wallace, Emmanuel Sanders, and Antonio Brown. The moniker bothered me at the time because it was about teamwork, because it was not about teamwork or camaraderie or football superlatives. This was no Steel Curtain or Three Amigos or Fearsome Foursome or Legion of Boom or Purple Peter Eaters or Seven Blocks of Granite or Four Horsemen. I was then and is now all about the money, or it was then and it is now all about money. Contrary to initial predictions Young Money provided, this is a big rant from James. We feel you, James. And look, until these players are unable to do what Antonio Brown is doing, they're going to do it if they think they can do it and get away with it. It's the old Scooby-Doo methodology.
I mean, there's so many references today that I just can't even connect with here, Dave. Just swinging and missing every pitcher throwing at me. No, I get the frustration with AB. Again, it's a sucky situation. It's really unfortunate that it's got to this point. Everyone thought AB was going to finish his career as a Steeler. That was the goal. That was the hope. Those were things that AB said over time. And I will side with players a lot of time for money, because I think that they need to be paid, and contracts in the NFL are kind of a raw deal for a lot of players. But yeah, I mean, I get the frustration. We don't disagree.
Right. Boy, I think we've actually come to the end of the current ones there. So hey. All right, what else you got for me?
That was it for me. if you have anything.
All right, I think we are ready for the combine. And as Alex said, when are we doing? Let's see, what is today? Today's Tuesday, so that means we're going to record Thursday night, and that Friday podcast will be up bright and early Friday morning. Please join us on SteelersDepot.com as we'll be tracking all the 2019 NFL Scouting Combine data as it happens, as we have done for many, many moons now. On top of it, and I think that's it until we meet again, Alex. People can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. They can follow Alex Kozora at Alex_Kozora on Twitter. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Not sure how many emails we'll be able to read over the next couple of days, but start filling up the email box again. If you like what we do and you want to donate during the off season here, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. That'll take you to PayPal. Look, you want to donate, $3, $4, $5 a month, set up a plan that way. That would be beneficial to the site and cost you a cup of coffee a month that way. We appreciate everybody that already does that and potentially will do that as well. So in the meantime, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.